What's up, guys? Run it back with something a little different this time around. I just wanted to talk about the state of the Khorne meta, so to speak. I am going to be talking about the most recent patch that added Khorne. Obviously, he's a huge mix-up for the faction as a whole. Very fun unit to bring, very powerful and capable as a fighter. But I do also want to, and there were other changes in that patch too, but I do want to talk about the patch before 5.1. I think it was 5.0. I don't remember the patch numbers. I don't really care. All I know is that Khorne has gone from being a pretty, maybe not a bottom tier. I don't think they were that bad like people thought, but certainly a low tier faction to being, I think, a top tier, like a low top tier. So I'm just gonna jump in here, and we'll just talk about Khorne to start off with. He's the big ad in the most recent patch. He's pretty busted, quite honestly. I do think that there are matchups where he struggles, namely against Kislev. I had a game against a Kislev player who just brought like a super cheap Lord with like they had like Hailstorm, I think, and Freezing Wind, and the Guardian Call. I think that's what the Lord had, and that's all they brought for a Lord. And then they just brought a ton of Streltsy, some armored Kossars, and Kislev warriors, and they just absolutely clowned on me in a tournament match. That didn't feel too good. And Khorne was kind of useless. I killed the Lord, and then Kislev, Kislev just has crazy high leadership and endured against me. So I think against high leadership factions where you can bring a super cheap caster, it's going to be kind of bad to bring Khorne. I don't know what all factions that is, but like maybe Dark Elves, Kislev. Dwarves probably not very good to bring him against, just because the leadership is really high on these guys, and the lots of armor, and the ones that don't have armor can also hit back really hard against Khorne, like the Demon Slayer and the like. So probably not very good there, but he's definitely an auto-include against vampire count factions. Like, all undead, I think, are going to be very powerful for him. Demons of Chaos is probably going to be a good matchup for him. Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh probably going to be one of the better ones, just because no armor on a lot of these units, lots of magic damage to negate with the abilities, and yeah, going to shut down all those really nasty Pavanes and effects that Nakari and the Exalted Keepers and Heralds and Lords and whatever can bring. Gonna be really good there. Lizardmen might be a bad matchup. I think it's just better to bring extra big monsters there. Khorne is a bit of a finesse character, I think. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it shakes out with using him. I think that you can get away with bringing him like this. You can cut Khorne's Howl if you want to. It is a pretty good ability. Those Fleshhounds stick around for 90 seconds, I think, and are pretty strong. They can rack up the value. They can certainly get more than 200 in the time that they're out. And they can provide a good buffer for Khorne to do some pretty good damage. So I think it is worth it generally, but you can cut it for extra gold. Prey of the Blood God is pretty insane. It's a double strength Spirit Leech. I'll just show off regular Spirit Leech here so you can get an idea. Where are you, Manfred? Yeah, Manfred's got Spirit Leech. Yeah, 13 seconds on regular Spirit Leech. Prey of the Blood God is unlimited. Why does it keep taking them away? But whatever. It's 22 seconds. It's a snare also. Lasts 22 seconds. Only targetable on Lords or Heroes, so that limits its utility a little bit. But like I said, there are quite a few factions that cannot get away with just ignoring bringing a caster or Lord of some type. Wars of Chaos need a Lord, and their Lord options are generally pretty expensive. I think Khorne could even do some good work against Sigvald, just like locking him in place and making him a little less, or a little easier to kite around. And if your opponent does bring Sigvald, they do also have to bring a caster, so, you know, there's some cool stuff that I think Karanak's going to be able to do there. Talking a little too much about the matchup-specific stuff now, but just to get back here, Prey of the Blood God absolutely wrecks Lords and Heroes. Has unlimited uses on 120-second cooldown. 120 seconds is quite a while, but when you think about the duration of domination games, they go pretty long. You know, you can get upwards of 20 minutes if it's a really close game, like back and forth and lots of stuff going on. And Karanak's pretty fast, and as long as you don't get him stuck in a blob where his mass can't push through, he's going to be on the field for a while. You can't really snipe this guy out. Like, pretty high, like high physical resistance and missile resistance, usually stacking on top of one another, makes it pretty difficult to snipe him with missiles. Crazy high spell resistance of 50%, if not just outright silencing magic altogether with his collar. This collar is pretty great too. 55-meter radius is pretty big. Certainly makes it difficult to avoid him. I do have a video up where you can see just how big that radius really is and how powerful it is. I mean, if your opponent tries to make a blob and just have like a cheap spellcaster, that caster is never going to get to use any magic. It's going to be really difficult to protect them and do what they need to do. And then Prey of the Blood God, if you can't get into the middle of the blob, you can just keep casting this and putting pressure on that caster, slowly working them down and keeping them from casting magic as much as possible. You're going to be able to really punish builds like that. But, you know, Valkia is going to be good with Karanak. Those two in conjunction, you know, you snare, Valkia flies in, gets a few attacks in, and that's generally going to be enough with Prey of the Blood God on top of Valkia swinging in there. Just going to absolutely mulch through those caster-type heroes. So, Karanak, great. Very good against all undead. Going to be overrepresented in those matchups, I think, which is a little scary. You know, you don't want to see just one unit brought all the time, but like I said, high leadership factions are going to be able to play around him when you can just bring a super cheap caster. You know, you can bring like a Great Eagle Archmage of Life with like nothing, or you can bring Alariel or Teclis, you know, something that can heal themselves and also has a little bit of speed on them is going to be a good bet. Teclis is pretty expensive, but you can cut a lot of his abilities to make him a lot cheaper. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how the meta shakes out with him, because I do think that regardless of how often you actually bring him, opponents are going to have to tech around him just because of the threat that he provides you. I mean, he is so strong. He really is pretty insane. So, very much worth the price point. I think personally a little overtuned with the abilities, but like I said, the counterplay around him is going to be interesting to see shake out, and he might not end up being as impactful as I think he is potentially going to be. But yeah. The other big change for Khorne, just to move on now, is the spell resistance buff, and the fact that the cultists finally got spell resistance back. It was missing on them for so long, and it really hurt, and I hated bringing them because if your opponents knew what they were doing, they would just spirit leech these guys to death, and they have pretty low health, and the lack of spell resistance on them really hurt them, but now they've got it back, and it's 35% for all Khorne units, which is, I think, pretty crazy. I thought that demons could have done to get the 35%, and the warriors could have gotten like 25%, but everything having the 35% puts them in the same realm as dwarves. Dwarves also have a passive 35%, and I do really like that for Khorne. I think it's gonna, I don't think it's too busted. And I think it makes the counterplay against Magic less reliant on Karanak. It's one of the potential reasons I think he might not end up being in as many games as he might otherwise have been. If Khorne had not gotten the spell resistance buff, I think Karanak would be in every game, just because he would be so vital to sniping spellcasters. But now I do think there's some options, just because you can actually survive your units being hit by spells now. Whereas before, 15% on the mortal units made them incredibly squishy to Magic still. Just because Magic is so powerful in this game, and not having access to it really hurts. You don't have anything to do in that phase of the game, so you can really get dumpstered by some really good casts. Stuff like Traderkin was pretty insane against Valkia and the like. Valkia did also get the benefit of the spell resistance, making her even tankier. Just still by far the best Khorne Lord choice. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. Spell resistance good. Speaking of Lords, let's talk about the Demon Prince. He got a pretty big cost reduction. Still not great, I don't think. Still a little lackluster, but getting the cost reduction is pretty nice. Just don't think he provides utility for any matchups that Valkia doesn't already do better. I might play around with him a little bit just to see if I can find some points for him to perform. I just don't think it's going to be possible. He's just so lackluster. There's just really nothing to this guy. He doesn't do anything special, and it is a little bit boring. That's really all I have to say about him. Exalted Bloodthirster got a little cheaper too. Still a niche Lord, also not stupendous. It does have Wrath of Khorne, which is a little underrated. If you can get within 60 meters, you can watch your opponent blow their caster up, which is kind of funny. And he can evade stuff pretty well, being a flying unit and just dodging back and forth. Deathbringer makes him very... gives him pretty good burst potential. I think there could be also some play with just bringing like Prey of the Blood God on Karanak and leaving the Brass Collar at home, and just casting Prey of the Blood God, popping Deathbringer, and just absolutely dropping in on top of something and obliterating it in a heartbeat. Maybe there's some options there. I haven't played enough games to tell you if that's viable or not, but I think there's some potential there. Other Lord changes, much cheaper Blood Thrones, also applicable for the Blood Reapers, which is really nice. I was really hoping to see that. They're only 250 more than the Blood Shrine now, so maybe you can bring these guys on that. They get a slightly buffed combat potential on this thing. As you can see, they get a little bit more health. They have slightly better leadership and melee attack, melee defense, weapon strength, and charge bonus. And, just nice to have. They also have Hellblade. I forgot about that. So, with the spell resistance, maybe you could make a completely spell resistant blob now. With the 35% casting Locus of Abjuration over the top, you technically are completely immune to all spells, so if your opponent does still bring stuff to try and punish a blob and you want to play that style, just like one Blood Reaper in the middle of a blob with the Locus of Abjuration in the middle of it, if you can keep them alive with the Gore Feast ability on top of them, good luck trying to remove the blob. Pretty cool, pretty fun, potential there. I think there is a little bit of stuff unlocked to do differently with Khorne now. I do think Valkia is just the most solid, dependable option still. Going to be seen in most matchups now still, but I do think that you can do some stuff with the rest of the Lords potentially now. So it's going to be fun to see that shake out. Except with Demon Prince. I just don't see him being viable in any matchup still. I don't know. Give him something else, man. Make Paragon of Carnage just full charge right off the bat, and he might be better. Just give him Revel and Slaughter, you know. I think that would be a better bet, you know. Or Gore Feast. Something to distinguish him. Gore Feast on the Demon Prince, I think, would just even him out. I don't think it would make him too powerful, and I think it would give him, you know, some actual play. Being able to, like, fly in, fight in the middle of infantry blobs, remove elite infantry, and then you can focus on bringing anti-large stuff to deal with big targets while he just takes care of elite infantry and the like, and you could see some more options for the rest of the roster, maybe. But yeah, those are the big changes. Some minor cost changes. Furies are a little bit more expensive, which is fine. They were incredibly powerful. I didn't think they were overtuned, but I do think that 50 gold is more than fair, because they do a lot of really effective work, and they are very difficult to kill with the spell resistance now, which is nice. Spawn got 50 gold off. Pointless. I don't know what that's really going to do to make them more viable. They're still kind of bad. Spell resistance on them, nice, but the problem is the armor. If they got up to like 60 armor, I think these things would be much better. They have pretty poor melee defense. They have great weapon strength. It would just be nice to see them be a little bit more durable to getting shot by missiles, because as it stands right now, they get wrecked by missiles of any kind. Cannot bring them against missile factions, which is, you know, pretty much everything you would want to bring them against. Like greenskins, you don't want to bring them against Grand Cathay. There's just too much armor there, but like greenskins, Dark Elves have a lot of low armor infantry that they could do well against. What else would you want to bring them against? You know, Bretonia, maybe you could bring them, but they are very vulnerable to the Knights still. You know, Knights of the Realm will probably just squash them in combat still. You know, not a lot of options for those guys at this point. I don't know. I'll play around with them at some point and see if I can make them work, but they have just always underperformed in terms of cost. I've never found them to get their value back, which is very sad. They're a cool unit. I think that they just need just like one additional modifier somewhere in here. I don't know what it is to make them better. I mean, having Frenzy on these guys is nice, and they're always going to have that active because they're unbreakable, which is cool, but, you know, nothing stupendous about them. I'm gonna talk about the last patch's changes. Bloodletters got more leadership, which really is all they needed. They don't die to a stiff breeze because of demonic instability anymore. It is very punishing if they get very low, but additional spell resistance means they're also even more tanky against getting sniped out before they can get into combat and just crumbling away. That's great. Cost reductions on the warriors. I do think that also getting spell resistance on the halberds. Halberds had some problems getting into combat as well. I think that the cost reduction and the addition of the spell resistance is going to make them viable in a lot of matchups. Going to be very vulnerable to AP missiles, obviously, but the Fury buff has made countering those type of units much more viable, and I do think there will be some utility to bringing these guys in some matchups. It's just going to be a mission of mine to figure out where all of the Khorne units fit and apply, because I do think that they're cost-effective across the board for the most part. I mean, hell, even Skull Cannons, as bad as they are, have a few niche matchups. High Elves being one of them. They're very good against High Elves, actually. Punish Silver Helms, Illyrian Reavers, Dragon Princes, if your opponent does bring those out, and the like. Not quite as good against the Fireborn, but the missile is just such high missile strength that it still wrecks the Fireborn. Where are those guys? Where are the High Elves? There we go. Yeah, only 35% fire resistance, and you circumvent the physical resist because it's a magic missile. So, It's nice to have a skull cannon in your army. Just one. You don't need two. Two is too many. One is perfect, and then you can bring like another blood shrine, just because blood shrines are so disruptive. So yeah, that's what it's looking like there, and I think that there's play for most everything. Bloodthirsters are a little lacking. The Khorne's Bloody Fist may be niche useful. It not having any form of healing sucks. I wish Gore Shell was like a 20% damage resistance against things when it's in range of large targets. That would be nice. It would just make it a little tankier. You know, I think that's kind of what it should do. And yeah, the regular Bloodthirster isn't the worst thing in the world. You know, big flying sniping type units like this are pretty okay. They did get a leadership buff, so they don't crumble as quickly. Soul Grinders, I think, are... If you're going to bring a big single entity monster, you're either bringing a Soul Grinder or the Bloodbrute Behemoth. Bloodbrute Behemoth is just gnarly with strength from flesh. Oh, this got a reduction. Oh no. No longer 0.2, but 0.15 is still pretty high. I don't think that this is going to break this unit and make it non-viable. I think it'll be it makes it a little bit less good in some matchups, but I think against I think Bretonia and Lizardmen are two matchups where it shines. You know, it needs some pretty dedicated missile counters to deal with. And like I said, Khorne has plenty of tools to shut down ranged units now. And yeah, it's gonna be pretty good play. But the Soul Grinder, to go back to, is much better now. It doesn't bug out and run to the edge of the map. That was its biggest problem. It's got the extra spell resistance now, which is nice. But even before that, I'd had some pretty prominent success with it in a few tournament matches, even. Good against Skaven, I think, if the Skaven don't bring shooting, which, if they do, you've got, you know, like Valkia and Furies, Fleshhounds, and Warhounds into the sunset to deal with those type of units. Even the Blood Shrine. Skaven have a problem with dealing with high-mass chariots, so the Blood Shrine can just roll into the back line and run over those infantry-sized weapon teams, which is pretty funny. And, you know, the Skaven only have one snare for ground units, which is the Seismic Snare on the Warp Grinders, so if you can just avoid that, and you never see these things anyways, then you're fine. I don't know what other snares they have against single targets. Maybe Sikich's Sigil is only Lords or Heroes. Okay. But yeah, there you go. Khorne's got some counterplay, and I think a Soul Grinder is actually pretty good in the matchup, honestly. I mean, you can force your opponent to bring in something expensive like a Warp Lightning Cannon or Natty Buboes and the like, and then you can use your superior mobility to like shut those units down. And the units that counter your Fleshhounds and Furies and the like are pretty vulnerable in turn to magic damage. You know, Death Runners and Ixis Triads and Eshin Triads in general, so you've got counterplay against those units there. It's pretty fun. This is a good unit. No longer a Pit Lord. It got the leadership buff in the last patch, and I think it is very capable now. Slight reduction on the Marauder Horsemen. I don't think it was really necessary, but it's nice. I'll take it. You know, the extra spell resistance is good on them, obviously. I can't say enough about the 35% being on everything. It's going to make Khorne better across the board, period. Chariots. I completely forgot about the chariot changes. Haven't played around with it a ton, but they do seem to perform better. I would love to experiment with the Gore Beast chariots. I think that against Dowie and maybe Skaven, which struggle against chariots, you know, lack a little bit of mass. I think you can do some fun stuff. Gore Beast chariots used to be the bane of a lot of factions' existences in Warhammer 2 at one point. But the chariots have been either the most haggard thing in existence or the worst. or the best thing in existence, and there's not really been any in between. Maybe they're balanced now. I haven't played around with them enough to know, but they do seem to be better than they were in the past. And there were some chariots that I think were wildly underrated, like the where are they? Razorgore chariots. I've got one matchup on the channel now where you can see what Razorgore chariots can do if they're not shut down. It's pretty insane. And it'll be nice to see if all chariots perform along those lines. Yeah, pretty cool. That's most of the changes. I don't really know what else there is to talk about right now. I think that kind of might be it for the majority of things. Play around with Khorne. Tell me what you guys think. If you do play him and watch this video, let me know if you think he's overpowered or not. I don't know if he's overpowered as much as he is just insanely powerful at what he does do. And has to be counterpicked around or you get wrecked. You know, worth seeing. I mean, he is pretty expensive, but 1,700 is really not that much for a unit that does what he can do, which is basically shut down all lords and heroes, casters and non-casters alike. I mean, if your opponent doesn't bring a lord with some kind of healing potential, I mean, just pop Prey the Blood God and rip 1,300 HP off of them at a time on unlimited uses and 120-second cooldown. That's pretty scary, you know. You don't even need to bring Brass Collar against, you know, certain stuff. I mean, you know, if you don't care about your opponent casting magic, really you can just bring them with Prey the Blood God and strip Khorne's Howl, and you got 1,300 gold sniper unit, you know, which is really not that expensive when you think about it. I mean, that's a Minotaur. Minotaurs are already pretty crazy, and you can see it working from Khorne's perspective as well, potentially. So yeah, I'm really excited about Khorne and where they're at. I think there's going to be some... oh my god. Potential here too. I'm going to talk about it in a second, but I think Khorne is going to be a high tier faction. Maybe low high tier. I don't think they're overpowered by any means. They do get beat by some factions and niche scenarios, but I think the meta is going to be a little bit more dynamic with them now instead of just the same old thing. You know, Khorne was pretty static after the last patch. You saw lots of... I personally brought lots of bloodletters and stuff that was a little harder to snipe with spells. Spells were very effective against Khorne. No matter what, you know, you brought Valkia all the time. Maybe Heralds would be a little better. You might see Exalted Bloodthirster a little more because he is a little cheaper. Demon Prince, maybe there's some stuff here. I really don't think so, though, but we'll play around. Khorne, going to be very strong against all the undeads. Undead are going to hate this guy. He is going to be so strong against them. Absolutely shutting down the hybrid casters that they rely on. I mean, vampire counts have no option but to bring hybrid casters of some description, and you're going to be able to really mess with them. So maybe this matchup was pretty much unwinnable for Khorne in the past because you had no way to really get at the lords that they had. It's going to be hard still, but I think that with Khorne on the table, there's going to be a little bit more of a chance for you. You know, you can pop Prey the Blood God and run around with Brass Collar and maybe use Scarbrand's Rampage to drag them into the radius of Brass Collar and then just beat the shit out of them. And keep them from using their spells to heal themselves. And then the passive healing on vampire counts really isn't good enough. It's just not going to be enough to handle the damage coming in. Because there is a lot of really high weapon strength on Khorne's roster. So I think you'll be able to do some cool stuff here. Yeah, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'm gonna dip out now. Oh, I forgot to talk about Skull Crushers. Never mind, I'm back. We're back in this, boys. Skull Crushers are maybe going to be viable now. They've always been solid. It's not like they were dreadful. They were just so expensive and got punished by magic so hard that it wasn't worth bringing them. But 35% resistance on these guys might be enough to give them time to, get, 1,700 value of damage out. But, Heralds of Khorne's Fury had some niche matchups where they were excellent, like against Norska or anything that had regeneration on them. Mantle of Immolation giving additional weakness to fire damage made it pretty crazy. You could get in there and absolutely brutalize trolls and the like. It was insane. I think they'll be even better now with the spell resistance and having physical resist on top. Pretty crazy. But Skull Crushers, might be able to do some work. Might be able to apply some pressure now. Maybe good in the High Elf matchup, because they are pretty tanky. They can resist everything except Sisters of Avalorn. They punish dragons pretty hard because they have really high mass, high model count, and can surround and just beat up on stuff with the pretty strong weapon strength, good charge bonus, and they have decent melee defense, Dragons on the High Elf roster are pretty gnarly. They've been pretty relied on in the past in that matchup. If you can use Karanak to shut down the magic and jump on something with a Skull Crusher unit, you can really beat them up. But Minotaurs are just so solid, man. I don't think Minotaur meta is going to go anywhere anytime soon. I don't know what you do to encourage bringing these Skull Crushers. Maybe just like 100 gold less on the standard variant would be good. I think they would be a little more worth bringing then, but we'll see. It's weird. Oh, Chaos Knight's got a bit of a stat debuff. I don't think it changes them that much. They're strong in general, and Chaos Knight's Khorne, I don't bring them too often. I just think there are other options for a sweeper unit on Khorne's roster. Like, you can just pay a little bit more and get AP, anti-infantry cavalry, And these guys do punch decently against large targets. They've got a little physical resistance on top of the spell resistance. They don't have the shields, which makes them a little squishier to missiles, but they're still really good. And then, like I said, Heralds of Khorne's Fury are pretty nuts. They do really well against quite a few units. They were incredible in the Wood Elf matchup, but I think Wood Elves is pretty much unwinnable at this point. I don't know what they were thinking with the Wood Elf changes. The early returns and results on Swift Shiver Shards, I'm guessing, is what people are just bringing a ton of. And they've got a lot of ammo, insane range now, and just absolutely dunk on everything. I need to do a little testing to see if that's it by itself, but I think also the Ancient Protector is, I don't know, man. I don't know. Wood Elves were already decent against the demon factions, but I don't know, maybe it was necessary. But the early showings from Wood Elves is that they win hard in pretty much every matchup. I mean, they've got an 88% win rate with almost 30 games played on Total Tavern right now. That's pretty brutal. I mean, I know it's not that many games played, but that's Kislev levels of win rate right now. Kislev was at 70% last season, and they were completely banned. So I am going to be curious to see how Wood Elves get handled, because they just seem pretty broken right now. But, I've talked about Khorne enough. It's going to be fun to see. Going to be a little bit more dynamic meta, maybe. I'm going to have to break out of my cycle of choosing the same stuff. And I just want to bring Karanak in every matchup. But, it's going to be time for me to branch out and bring some other stuff and see what they can all do without the angriest dog in the world. doing what he does. So that's going to be it, guys. For real this time. Take care. Peace.